go, that's official. Okay, we'll just give it another 30 seconds to let people arrive. Okay, welcome everybody to room 3. Today this session is entitled Pastoral Care in a Climate Emergency. My name is Matt, I'm a curate I'm a curate in Bristol. I work closely with Hazelnut with doing some eco-church stuff in more rural environments. But I'm here to introduce Deborah Tomkins, who is the co-chair of Green Christian. Deborah, over to you.
Thank you, Matt. I'm also in Bristol, and I can see at least one other person who's in Bristol here as well, so that's rather lovely. Yes, he's waving. Lovely. I'm co-chair of Green Christian, as I said. Green Christian is actually 40 years old this year, so we're pleased that we've got this far. And I've been co-chair for 3 years, and I've been a trustee for a number of years. We're an entirely voluntary organisation, apart from buying in a little bit of occasional sort of technical help, like helping create a website or anything like that, and a little bit of admin. But we have, I think it's 12 trustees, and we're all in active leadership of Green Christian. And we also have a raft of volunteers. I think there's probably 50 or 60 volunteers who do lots of different bits and pieces around the place. We're dispersed. We don't have a central office because we don't have much funds. We can't afford an office, and we all work from our various places, and we come together every now and then for retreats or conferences, and we do a lot online. We're very used to this, and we have a lot of resources, and which are all mostly free because we're a charity. So do have a look at us, and I just would really commend us to you. We've been around for a long time, and we do a lot of really good stuff. So I am going to share my screen now because I'm going to talk about, is that working? Yes, it is. And I'm going to talk about Green Christians. That's Green Christian, promoting hope, prayer, hope and action, responding to the cry of the earth. And you can just see along the tabs along the top, each of these has got, it's a drop down list of various things, but I'm not going to dwell on that because I've just talked about it a little bit. Ordinary Christians, extraordinary times. I'm going to be talking about pastoral care in the climate emergency. A complicated emotional response to climate change is not only rational, but probably inevitable, unless people remain in denial. And people these days are beginning to talk, and actually have been for a few years, about pre-traumatic stress. The stress when you know something terrible is happening, and how do you process that? Here are some emotional responses, not all, inevitably, but a lot. You can see, I'll just quickly read them through: shock, horror, denial, distress, anxiety, terror and fear, burnout from various things, and it can be burnout from overwork as well, anger, blame, regret, guilt, depression, despair, bargaining, insomnia, sorrow, and grief. And I'll just stop there for a second, because all the preceding emotional responses are all bundled up in grief. And we know, those of us who've had a loss know how complicated grief is. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in the 1960s identified 5 stages of grief, which were actually not for the people who were being bereaved, but for those who were about to die. And since then, this model has been developed, and other models have been developed too. And in fact, it's now being realized that there aren't stages. You don't go through stages like doing GCSEs. It's more like you bounce around between different aspects, different phases of grief. Then there's confusion and loneliness, if you think that nobody else feels the same way that you do, sadness, sensations of illness, although nothing can be found, and even hope. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Other responses can be a strong sense of wanting to bring about justice, to be involved in action, campaigning, changing people's minds, reparation, although that's a difficult one. We've seen with slavery recently. How do you perform reparation for 200 years of fossil fuel damage, which actually, for the most part, was unknown. People didn't know they were doing it. Rebuilding, creating something better, such as a wildlife garden or an allotment out of wasteland, and finding and creating hope in what seems to be a hopeless situation. And we've heard quite a lot about that the last 2 days. It's been really, really inspiring hearing about where hope can be found. But the challenge for many is how to reach this place of active hope when they are feeling a very strong sense of despair. So Deep Waters is a project of borrowed time from Green Christian, and it's an 8-week journey of guided reflections and discussion, exploring climate grief and eco-anxiety, including love, grief, truth, lament, wisdom, justice, and hope. So these are quite weighty topics, but we have very carefully crafted the sessions to make it accessible to as many people as possible. Borrowed Time is a project of Green Christian, as I just said. It actually has its own website now. So this is what it looks like if you want to go and have a look. We have 2 support programs. One is Deep Waters, which I'm telling you about this afternoon. And the other one is something called Cloud and Fire, which is still in development. And it is, Deep Waters is a kind of 8-session thing that people do together. And Cloud and Fire is designed more as a contemplative, meditative, probably you would call it an extended retreat that takes place over several weeks in company with others, and that you come together and then go away again and come together, and you're sharing scripture and reflecting on it in that time. Deep Waters is designed for groups either by Zoom or in person. So we've designed it so that we can done it in both ways. And for the last 2.5 years, we've been doing it on Zoom. 8 weekly sessions is ideal, though of course if you have to skip a week, it's not a disaster. So these are the 8 sessions. I'm going to show you this slide again later on. It's an introduction, the first week. The second week is when we start thinking and talking about the faces of climate grief. Then we help each other tell the truth, or find out what we mean by that. Then we talk about lament. The 5th week, we discuss mortality and extinction. Then we can move on to wisdom and love. The place of blame, forgiveness, and justice. These are weighty topics. And then we move on to redefining what we mean by hope. And that's very important because many people have a kind of unrealistic hope that perhaps God will just step in and sort everything out, or that there's some unnamed technology that we haven't invented yet will somehow make everything better. And actually, we have to find hope in different ways, and it's firmly rooted in the gospel. So it works by sending out. So what happens is somebody will say, yes, I'd love to run this in my church. And they sign up and they get sent a link to all the materials on our Google Drive in Green Christian. So, and everything is provided. So you don't have to do anything. It's all there for you. You get a PDF and you send that out to the people who want to join you on this journey. And you do it a few days ahead so people have a chance to look at it and reflect on it. It contains various types of resource, a short article, some poetry, scripture, images, links to other resources, including music, and also a reflective activity to be done alone at home. Then during the session, and each session is only an hour and a half, we don't want to overload people. There's a lot of stuff going on. An opening greeting and prayer, and maybe some notices. People go into small breakout groups or rooms for 40 minutes with a facilitator who takes part also as a participant. And people who've done this 3 or 4 times say that each time they get something different out of it. Discussion is centered on 3 or 4 open-ended questions, and usually people discuss 1 or 2 of those questions. Then in plenary, groups feed back in a very non-personal way. It's very important that people don't say, well, Peter said this and Amanda said that and so on. It's got to be very short feedback, but a general feedback. We discussed this and we reflected on that. And it's very interesting because every time we've run it, and we've run it 5 times now, I found that each group has discussed an entirely different topic in an entirely different way within the theme of the week. But it's been what's important to that group. The groups remain the same week by week, because that way you build confidentiality and you enable trust for sharing. And then at the end, there's a whole group reflective activity, which we also supply. And then the person, whoever's doing the prayers, will do final prayers and a blessing. So the resources we have are each other, a structure that becomes familiar and holds us, our own emotions and reflections, interests, passions, perspectives, and struggles, the materials for each session, our surroundings and our contexts, both natural surroundings and social, where we live, the perspectives of borrowed time and its intentions, and a spirituality that recognizes that the challenge is more than economic, political, scientific, or technological, and that's open to new expression and experience. And our thinking and reflecting between the sessions, and we recommend starting a journal for this time, and people have found that really valuable, and they see how they have changed and grown during this time. So just to be really clear, and this is something we tell all the participants, Deep Waters is not a course in the accepted sense. It's not a campaign, and it's not an educational resource. It's not something that people come along to just to see what's going on. It's something to be shared. It's a journey, and it's for people who really feel they need this space. Exploring our emotional responses to our awareness of rapid and irreversible climate change and ecological damage. And some people still believe, not people who necessarily come to Deep Waters, but people believe that we can reverse climate change. Well, it's not possible to reverse a glacier that's melted. So it's that kind of thing we're thinking about. And this is something else we also say, and I unashamedly took it from Alpha. If it's not for somebody, just you just let somebody know. You just let the facilitators know, and they will not try to persuade you to continue. I think it's really important that people have that level of trust, that they're not going to be hounded or badgered about something. It's also worth mentioning that it's not suitable for people who feel no distress at all, or who feel optimistic about the future, or who feel that Deep Waters is a bit negative. And this offering is for pastoral support. It's not, in other words, it's not a counselling thing. So this is the introductory session, and I'm just going to whiz you through just a few paragraphs. I can't take you through the whole thing. It explains Deep Waters, the introductory session, and sometimes people come along to the first one and think, well, it's not really for me, and they drop out at that point, but most people continue. So it explains on the left, you've got an introductory, few paragraphs, and then we do a little bit on love, because we have to start with love. We grieve only what we love. And it was very interesting. I was just in the Forest Church session, and the lady who was talking about that talked about, we only grieve what we love. So we start our journey with love. And it explains, the way it works for the people who come along. So we have a text, we have a small essay or a small article, we have scripture, and here in the first session we have Psalm 104, the whole of it, not just this section. And we have images, really amazing. Some of our images are absolutely amazing that we have found. And there are links to other articles, to videos, and to music, and to poetry, and to all sorts of things. And the reason we've done this is because we all have different learning styles. We all learn in a different way. And I've had people say to me, well, I absolutely loved the images and I got so much out of it, but the poetry left me cold, and vice versa. And I have people who've said, well, I didn't follow up any of the links, but I just loved that little bit at the beginning, you know. So everybody learns in a different way. And what we've tried to do is create something that's versatile enough for people to get something out of it. Not everything has to be understood or accepted, but it's a starting point for everybody. Here's another image from, sorry, it's a little bit blurred, from session 2, grief. This is an image from the lament resource. That's very powerful. I find that one very powerful. This is one about, I think this is one from love or hope even, I can't remember. Amazing. And then poetry, what we've done is, because we didn't have time, and it would have taken probably a couple of years to get all the permissions for the poetry, we've just quoted a little bit and put links in so people can look it up for themselves. And then there's sometimes there's some music or something else going on video. This is you can't look it up right now, but you could if you downloaded the material. Stephen Furr is an Anglican priest and composer, and he produces incredible stuff. 1 year in nature, time lapse. It's amazing. Then in that first session, pour a little olive oil into a saucer. Imagine the olive tree. This is what you do at home alone. And then the questions. We suggest that people. I'm so sorry, it's my dogs. We suggest that people take just 1 or 2 questions. And then we give a hint about what's coming next week, or we tell people. So that's going back to that slide I showed you earlier. You can see now how it begins to hang together. From week 2, we also add in extra resources. So this is the grief session. We've added in things like, I gave you the list earlier of kinds of psychological responses. You may wish to reflect on it and to ask, what am I feeling today? No judgment about this. This is fine to feel this way. And we so often try and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and feel that, you know, this isn't right. I've got to be strong. I'm a Christian. I've got to be strong and have hope. But actually, it's fine to be human. Just remember the Psalms of David. There's no right order to feel things in. Be gentle and be aware of all the forms this can take, including physical symptoms. And children too. They're learning a lot about climate and things in school now, and I'm hearing anecdotally of some very, very anxious young people. And the joint activity, which isn't in the first week because there's so much else going on, from the second week, for the 7 weeks following the first week, we have a reflective space, which people do together. And it's worked really well on Zoom, actually, amazingly. So everybody brings their little bowl of ash or a bowl of water or a twig they've picked up in the park or something like that. And the group leader reads a reflection on that object, which is provided by Deep Waters, with spiritual and biblical insight, as well as insights from the natural world. But people are free to make their own reflection if they wish to. That's not a problem. Final notes, breakout groups remain the same each week to build trust and enable sharing. It's recommended that facilitators have, if possible, taken part in Deep Waters as a participant, or at least have had a conversation with Green Christian. I am very willing to have a Zoom call with anybody who would like to run a Deep Waters journey in their own context and to talk it through. Really happy to do that. All resources are provided and full guidance given. And in fact, I haven't said, but it's really important to know, it's all free. It's free. There's no charge at all. Deep Waters is designed to help process climate and ecological distress and anxiety, and to find a point of equilibrium, using it as a springboard for moving forward. So please don't skip sessions. I'm a pastor's wife. I know what it's like. You might have an 8-week study course and you think, well, we've only got room or time in the church calendar for 4 or 5 of those. So we'll just leave out 3, 5 and 7 or something. I would really strongly recommend that nobody does that with this. It's been very carefully crafted to explore as much as possible and as wholly as possible in an actual journey, the journey that people are going through, and to reach that point of active hope. And hope is, I haven't got a slide for hope, which I should have done, but hope is more than hope in the future in some ineffable way. Hope, as we have discovered this last 2 days, and what we strongly believe in Green Christian, is rooted in the everyday, in our own sphere of influence. And that's where it begins to grow. It's a very tender plant, hope, but you have to nurture it. And then last of all, Deep Waters is ideal for church groups. It presupposes Christian faith, but not deep theological knowledge. So nobody has to be theologically trained to come and join in with this. However, Green Christian walks alongside those of all faiths and none. So Deep Waters is therefore open to all, as long as participants are aware of and comfortable with its Christian background. And some are, and some aren't. So that's just something to be aware of. So that is it from now. So I'll stop sharing. And yeah, if you'd like to.
Great timing. We've got 5 minutes left.
5 minutes for questions.
5 minutes for questions.
Yeah.
As we're a small group, I think we're happy for people just to pipe up.
Just chip in, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
David says he doesn't hear anger as a response to climate change. David, would you like to say more about that? Oh, is David not here anymore? Perhaps he isn't. Okay.
Sorry, I'm here, but I'm just muted, just while I'm vacuuming in the background.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, it's just sometimes, yeah, when you see the systems, the powers that be, the economic and political systems, and I was attending a session earlier about the colonization, and just feeling really angry, like I want to go and break some windows, or want to do something, something to disrupt the system. And I know that that's part of nonviolent direct action and so on. But I suppose that there's a level at which you get so frustrated about the lack of progress that you do feel anger in the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard a lot, and I think from the younger generation, teenagers and so on, they're very angry at us older people, definitely, and that comes out very strongly sometimes. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good observation. Thank you very much, and I think we all feel it. I've certainly, I think probably many of us on this conference have experienced a kind of grief around the climate and ecological situation, and I certainly have, and I did go through a very profoundly difficult time a few years ago, and that, I suppose, having come out the other side, except you still feel it. It's not that it's not there, it still is, but there are ways of managing it, and that's really several of us feel very motivated to work on that. I can see some people here. Oh, sorry, Colin and Mary, I can see.
Well, I'd just like to say that we've been on the Deep Waters journey, and they're really, really helpful. Fantastic resources. I can't really put it into words. And the group, the supporting you, is the same people, and so you felt that you could really share deeply with them. Yeah, I'd recommend it. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. What I did hear from people is that you got to know each other very, very well. In the small groups. So I don't know how many small groups you've had, maybe 15 or 20. No, 20, must be more than 20, 25. And some of them are still in touch with each other. So it's really good. Hazel feels feels grief at the lack of interest in much of the church around climate change and green issues. Yes, absolutely, Hazel. I completely agree. And it's shocking. It's shocking. Join Green Christian. We get it. Do join us. We'd love to have you if you're not already a member.
Deborah, thank you so much. We are out of time. We really appreciate you sharing with us this afternoon. If everyone can show their appreciation. Thank you, Deborah. Next up in room 3, Jeremy Williams will be chatting to us about how your church can help build a fairer and greener economy. So if you want to hang around in room 3 for that, that sounds great. If not, it's been lovely sharing this time with you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Deborah. Take care. Bye.
Probably stop recording now, I guess.
Oh, I will, yeah.